All right, so in this week's guitar lesson, we're going to learn this little bluegrass composition that I wrote. So what I played in the intro, everything note for note, we'll break it all down. And what's nice about this is you can play it by yourself. It works on electric or acoustic guitar. Obviously, I think it sounds better on acoustic guitar, but if you've only got electric, you can do this. And we're going to be talking about flat picking. That's where you alternate pick. You pick out these melody lines with your right hand, and then you strum the chords. It's sort of back and forth. It's kind of call and response-ish in that respect. But anyway, even if you're not a fan of bluegrass, and I realize that some people see the title and they go, oh, bluegrass, that's not for me. You should at least follow along with this, because the synchronization between the left and right hand, you could translate that into any style, whether you want to play fast Joe Bonamassa style blues or shred or whatever. You can, the same principles, the techniques apply. And what better way to practice than to have a little composition like this? So I've got the lesson split into two videos, into two parts. In this video, we're going to go through the first part. If you'd like to learn the second part, as well as download the tablature and have access to the on-screen tab viewer for this, you can get those things by going to activemelody.com, go to the weekly lessons page, and do a search for EP458. Okay. Two things I want to talk about right up front. One, I just want to mention this guitar. This is a new one for me, not a new guitar. It's a 1947 Martin 018. And this came from one of you, an Active Melody site member. I put out an email a few weeks ago asking if anybody had any vintage Martins or Fenders or Gibsons. And I had several responses from folks, but I ended up settling on this one. We went back and forth. I'm not going to mention her name, but she was nice enough to send me pictures, and when I saw the guitar, I just kind of fell in love with just the pictures because it just looks so good. I'm always a little skeptical when I see a guitar that looks too clean, especially if it's this old. But this one just was one of those situations where it hadn't been played, a lot. It had been sitting under a bed for many years. And man, I got this guitar and I've just fallen in love with it. So I thought this would be the perfect guitar to play for this. It's got that nice little bright, punchy sound, and it just sounds really good for this kind of acoustic bluegrass thing. The other thing I want to mention is the capo. Now, this is the first lesson in 11, 12 years of doing these YouTube lessons where I've used a capo. And I've always stayed away from them because I always figure somebody out there doesn't have one, and they think, oh, I can't do this. But this style sounds so much better. Well, two things. I think it sounds better, and then it's easier to play if you use a capo. And what I mean by that is when you shorten the length of the string, you tighten the tension, basically. These strings are a little tighter than they would be if I didn't have the capo. And when they're looser like that and flappier, if that's the way to say it, it's a little harder to play fast. Just slightly, but that's enough to throw some people. So anyway, you're going to need a capo for this. If you don't have a capo, you can just learn it without the capo down in first position. You're just going to have to kind of translate it all in your head, I guess. But anyway, you can get capos. You can go to Amazon if you just need to order one. Obviously, your local guitar store will have them. Hopefully, you've got a capo somewhere in your arsenal, though. So with the capo on the 3rd fret, then that makes these chords, we're going to be playing what looks like a C, F, and a G chord in terms of shape, but those chords actually become an E flat, an A flat, and a B flat. Now, I'm not going to call the chords E flat, A flat, or B flat at all. Everything I'm going to refer to are the shapes. That's just going to make it easier to describe what's going on here. So as far as I'm concerned, with the capo on, when I do this, I'm playing a C chord, because I'd be doing everything I'd be doing, without the capo. Okay. All right, so here's how we're going to start this. We're going to start off, and we're going to be thinking about our C chord. And everything I'm going to be doing is really based around this chord shape. Even though I'm not making it the entire time, that's in the back of my head. So I'm going to start with that, but I'm going to take my ring finger off. And this is going to be good news for some of you, because you're going to see that the chord that I play, for the most part, a lot of these chords are just triads. So we're going to be playing strings 4, 3, and 2. Out of that, what would be that normal C chord shape down in first position. When we go to the 4 chord, for example, the F chord, we're going to make it like this, a little triad. It's a lot easier to do, so you don't have to think about trying to strum all 6 strings. Okay, so we start off with our little triad like this, and then the first line goes. So let's look at that. Make your C chord like this, the triad, and then we're going to lift our middle finger and then do a strum. So those are 2 downstrokes. When I lift my middle finger, I do a hammer-on to the 5th fret, 4th string. 2 strums there, and then, so that's, I keep my index finger locked down the whole time. That's part of that C chord, so I just keep it in place. So I'm going to do middle finger on the 5th fret 3rd string. So it's down, up with the right hand, and then we do the same thing on the 4th string, down, up. So 5th fret, 5th fret. And then that last note is ring finger on the 6th fret 5th string, and that puts me in position to go ahead and play the full C chord. And I'm just playing the middle 4 strings. So the notes that I'm playing here, obviously you know what the chords are. You can understand the chord shapes, but the notes, these little fill notes, those are coming from the C major scale. And you need to know your C major scale down in this position because you're going to use this all the time. And so I'm just going to go ahead and play through it. I'll put the tab up on the screen. You can pause the screen and learn it that way if you don't know it, but it's... You need to know that. And it works really nicely between the 2 notes of your C chord, where your ring finger is on the 5th string and your index finger on the 2nd string. So that's your C major chord with the open strings in there. Now you have this note below that, and then that note. So those are 2 extra notes down this direction. And then at the top you've got those extra notes if you want to do the full gambit there. But that's what that sounds like. Now with that, we can do all kinds of melody lines, and a lot of the melody that I'm playing is coming from that. So I just wanted to set that up, that's where these notes are coming from. We're going to mix it up in a minute. We're going to go into Mixolydian, but it's just making one adjustment. Okay, so the next line goes. So back to that C triad here, do the same hammer on like we did, strum the chord, and then an upstroke on the open 1 string, that open E string. And then we're going to play that 2nd string, lift our index finger, and then middle finger down on the 5th fret 3rd string, and go ahead and make the 4 chord, which is your F. Now we're not making the full F chord like this, we're just making that top 3 strings out of it. Makes it a lot easier. Middle finger on the 5th fret 3rd string, and then just bar strings 1 and 2 on the 4th string. So from the beginning, you can start to hear the melody sort of coming out of that and start to feel the rhythm. It's already being defined. All right, so now we're going to go back to the 1 chord, back to our C chord. So to do that, I played. All right, so for that, we've still got the first 2 strings barred here on the 4th fret. Now this is because of the F chord, right? So we're doing a hammer-on with our middle finger to the 5th fret 3rd string, play the chord, and then an upstroke on the 1 string. And then we go back to that 5th fret 3rd string, and then I lift that and play strings 3 and 2 with the open 3rd string. And then watch this. There's a hammer on to get us back to the C chord. You start to see a lot of repetition here. And what's interesting to me is it's not just in what I'm doing. If you listen to Tony Rice or to Norman Blake or Doc Watson, any of these great flat picking guitar players, you're going to hear these little same licks. We all use the same ones, so anyway, that's just a very common one when you're playing out of C. It just sounds so good. So we have now watch this. Now this gets us to the 5 chord, which is our G, or G7. Now that's that same hammer-on of the C chord, and then you strum the chord, and then we're going to walk down that major scale that I showed you. So it's 6th fret, 4th string, down to the 5th fret, open 4th string, and then we come down to the 6th fret, 5th string, and and then all the way down with our middle finger, that's the one I used anyway, to the 5th fret, 5th string. And then after that, I put my pinky, so I push that down, and then I put my pinky here on the 6th fret, 4th string, so that I can play that, and that's a G7 chord. And that may be a G7 you've never played before. But you see this kind of chording, this sort of chord voicings in bluegrass. Another way I see it sometimes is like this. These bottom 3 strings would be like playing the D7 shape. That's what I was thinking about when I made that chord. And I'm just playing strings 5, 4, and 3. The open 3rd string. It's a G note, right? It's a really pretty sounding G7. Alright, so it starts off the same. That same little hammer on there to get into the C chord, but then watch this. Now that's different. It sounds a little different. It sounds a little bluesier. Right? That note. So let's look at the notes here. 6th fret 3rd string, 5th fret 3rd string, open 3rd string. And then we're down to the 5th fret 4th string and 6th fret 5th string. So, and then strum your C chord like that. Now what is this note? That would be a flatted 7. So to play that scale, if we take our major scale that we just learned, but we flat the 7, it goes like this. So now you have this note. It's just one note different, but it makes a big difference. And when you're playing bluegrass, you'll hear a lot of these little bluesy runs that use that Mixolydian scale. That flatted 7. You gotta get that sound in your head, right? It's the same note that's also in your C7 chord. Maybe a light bulb went off, you go, oh, flat 7, yeah, 7. There it is, right, C7? The C7 is just the flatted 7. Alright, so anyway, we have this. Little bluesy run. Now watch this, the next lick goes. Now that lick right there is worth the price of admission. I love this lick. So what we're doing here is we're playing the open E string, and then I put my pinky down on the 7th fret 2nd string. There it is. And so there's a dissonance sort of clash there, and then we go back to the open 1 string, and then index finger goes back to where its anchor point is, which is that 4th fret 2nd string. And then after that I go a little hammer on. That's the 3rd string. We hammer onto the 5th fret and then release it. Now I'm keeping my index finger locked down. Once it goes down, it stays down. So we have, and then middle finger down on the 5th fret 4th string, and then you play the open 3rd string, and then ring finger on the 6th fret 4th string. Then I can play my F chord. Now obviously we're playing, it's the same F triad we played before, but we've got this extra note in the chord, right? This is playing a little more of the full F. So now this lick, the dissonance thing, all that is that's the flat 3. So like if I played a C minor chord, so there's your C major, right? If I played a C minor, it would sound like this, right? There's the flat 3rd. Here's your C major. There's your 3rd interval. If you flat the 3rd, you get the minor sound. So when you have that minor with the major, that's what gives you that kind of sound. And you play that in blues all the time. You probably just don't think about it. Like if you're playing an E, that hammer on, E minor to a major, that's doing the same thing, right? It's in the blues everywhere. It's just what makes this sound different is having that one note ring out. It sounds a little different, but you hear that in bluegrass quite a bit. So that's why it's so important to know your scales in first position with those open strings so you can do those kinds of runs. Okay, the next line, let's play the next line and then we'll break it down. Okay, so here's a fun little flat picked line that goes like this. Alright, and all of that would be played over the F. let's look at that. So we got ring finger on the 6th fret 2nd string. We're starting off on the 2nd string here. It starts off with a downstroke. Now it's just down, up, alternate picked with the right hand. So it's 6th fret 2nd string, down to the 4th fret. And then pinky's up here on the 7th fret 2nd string. And then we come back to the 6th, back to the 4th. So we have 6, 4, 7, 6, 4. I'll explain these notes in just a minute. And then we come down to the 5th fret 3rd string, and then open 3rd string. And then another hammer on, watch this, we're going to drop to the 4th string. So I'm going to do that hammer on with my middle finger to the 5th fret 4th string. And then the upstroke on the open 3rd string. And then we go back to the 4th string and play. So it's 5, open, ring finger goes down on the 6th fret 5th string, and then we can easily play that C chord. That was a nice transition to get us from that F to the C. And if you get nothing else out of this lesson, you've got this great little alternate picked line, flat picked line that gets you from the 4 chord back to the 1 chord. Now the notes in that would be, those notes are coming out of the F mixolydian. So just like we did with the C, where we took the C major scale and we just flatted one of the notes, we flatted the 7th interval to get the mixolydian, C mixolydian. The same thing for F. So for the F major scale, you go, there's your flatted 7. So when I came up and hit that note, that's where that comes from. And for the most part, I'm not doing that. I'm not changing the scale to match the chord. But in that one case, I just did. And I probably got that from Norman Blake. Now the last little bit I'm going to play here goes, right? That's the G chord, back to the C chord. Now this is a great little transition chord. It's a G7. And what I'm doing, it's really easy to play. Middle finger is on the 5th fret 4th string. I'm going to do a hammer onto the 6th fret 4th string. And then we're going to play strings 4, 3, and 2. And listen to that. Isn't that cool? That's just like a little embellishment off that G chord. And that's how I played it. So it's hammer on, down, up, then down, down, and then back to your C. Right? Instead of me playing a full chord like this, I just played this little piece of it. Because in my mind, I know the G chord is this. Even if I do nothing else, just open, it's strings 4, 3, and 2, right? So I can mess with that. I know I've got those open notes. I can do things like this to make a G7. I can start playing around with that when I know I've got those open strings already taken care of. And I don't have to play the full chord. It's just like, that's the one thing that it took me years to realize. Like, I watch these bluegrass guys playing, they're not doing this every time there's a G chord or this every time there's a G7. They're going little pieces of it, and that's enough. All right, so let me back up. I'll play through it one more time, and then we'll see you in part 2. We'll break down the second half. And remember, as a premium member, you'd also have access to the tablature and the on-screen tab viewer, and you can pause it, you can loop sections, you can slow down the playback. You have all those controls that you don't have in this video. All right, we'll see you in part 2.